All right. Well, while we're waiting for River,
What you
what I'm
wrote
going to do is just go
down?
ahead and introduce myself. My name is Daywalker, hashtag Bearded Butch, and my wife and I have been hosting the Butch Femme main group on Facebook and the affiliated groups for 12 plus years, almost 13. God, I guess. Well, it'll be 13 in February, March ish. Anyway, I that's a long time. I've lost count. So over a decade, and we've been just blessed to have a really excellent community of folks over the years. You know, people come and go, come and go, come and go, but it doesn't stop. So there's no shortage of us. We've got the main group hit over 20 about 23,000 just recently.
That's what I was saying. You guys we should become a town.
I'm down for that, man.
That many people. That's not a village. It's a town.
Well, because we got 16,000 in Ukiah, where I'm living. So, you know,
We'll
Right.
have to go to California.
Yeah,
So,
but it's gonna fall into the ocean, man.
Oh, it's gonna break off. I tell you. Yeah,
I'll have oceanfront property.
It's gonna break off, man.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So what I was going to do is go ahead and I was going to read a little bit of the intro on this one,
Well,
and where it came from. In fact, one of the main characters, which is Jay, ended up having to work today.
Okay.
And Jay was the last person I had a conversation with that just kept mimicking some of the other conversations I was having with folks, and the one word that kept coming up was lost, and that's why I said, you know what, let's do a panel. Let's do everything's a panel, right? Because I think that having some some voices in there to express what it's been like during the navigation of community and transitioning has been interesting. And so this one I titled The L Men Among Us, but the L stands for lost, not lesbian, unless you so consider yourself. And it's a word that's used by many trans men over the years when expressing post-transition search for acceptance, extended family, of community, and love. And there's a variety of contradictions for them to navigate, both pre and post-transition, but their connection to this culture remains strong. The men who had identified, some of y'all had identified as butch, stud, masculine of center in one way or another, some maybe not. You lived a past rooted in and surrounded by an entire culture that embraced the idea of celebrating female masculinity. And what some seems to come up a lot through my conversations through the years is many of them feel lost once they've come to their true selves. And the culture, butch femme culture, has evolved to become a remarkable example of what inclusion looks like under the great big rainbow canopy. But of course, that didn't happen overnight. There had to be a lot of bridges built. Alliances were put to the test. We made it through. Those of you who were, around like in the old .com site, there were threads upon threads. Community members that had pause over the presence of men and cared to do internal work had to turn their sense of intrusion into a sense of inclusion. There were some amazing conversations involved, some of which should have been archived and made accessible to future generations. The struggle to find a sense of where one belongs post-transition is real, but that struggle also intersects with how the butch femme community has evolved to become a unique culture that now includes the most diverse set of identities regarding gender and sexuality than any other under the rainbow canopy. And so what I wanted to do was just invite everybody to the table to talk about feeling lost while on the journey to finding yourself as well. And so I put in here some of the things that were ideas, questions that I was going to be throwing out. And the curiosity for me was, and where it always intersects is within this community and this subculture, is The first one is the degree of difficulty in coming out to the folks in the Butch Femme community versus coming out to your family and loved ones. And for some, one was more difficult than the other. And believe it or not, for some it was the community. Because we're complicated people and we can be harsh. You know, and so but before we roll into the questions and whatnot, I want if you could each introduce yourself, how you identify, how long you've been post yourself. Yeah. Wolf, why don't you go ahead and start, because you're in the upper right corner over here.
Yeah, I'm Wolf. I've identified as Butch and still do since 1987. I've always been Butch. I started T in 2007, 6. Yeah, so Shane and I actually met the first time I got a shot of tea from a friend of mine. I identify as a trans what the fuck. You know, the bottom line for me is I'm glad I was not born and raised male, because I believe that I got a lot of really good emotional tools that I would not have gotten had I been raised male in the era I was born in.
That's an interesting thought.
You know, so it's a challenge for me. Gender is how I've identified over time is variable. What identity I choose to assume. I do not identify as male, even though that's what my driver's license says, because it's more accurate than female. So,
and you get a lot less shit when you're handing it over an IG to somebody too, I imagine.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have some stories. You know, cops go, "This isn't your ID."
So, yeah, hospital visits are fun too. Zach?
Yeah, well, hospital, yeah, you know that. I mean, how many times have I tried to drive to California and ended up in the hospital?
I know it.
My name is Zach Stevens. I came out actually, I was outed by a close relative, read my journal when I was visiting. And that's how I even had to go to the library to look up lesbian. And I realized, wow, yeah, that's why I feel like a boy, because I like women. And I became a lesbian. And that was in 1982. And then I didn't do my transition till about 7 years ago. And that's because I was in a long-term relationship, almost 24 years. And I didn't, after all the hassle of trying to convince her elderly parents that being a homosexual was okay, I thought being transsexual would even be worse, but I couldn't wait anymore. And now she's an ex, but she picked out my first name. And so, I mean, she was fine with it, but I think mostly because
that's a long time to wait to go next level. I'll tell you, that's a long time.
Well, I dropped out of the lesbian community because she, as usual, I dated mostly straight women, and she is Latvian. So I did everything with the Latvian community instead of lesbians. Up to her, I had done, 20, 30 years of political activism of trying to do gay, lesbian laws, etc., act up, everything. And
pardon my ignorance, but what is Labian?
I beg your pardon?
I said, pardon my ignorance, but what is Labian?
Latvian. She's from Latvia. It's over by Ukraine.
I see. It's a place. Okay.
Yep. And they all speak Latvian. And the church, we went to a pagan church, but with the Latvian church in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities where I live, is Latvian. And I couldn't understand anything, but I would go for funerals or for weddings. But
Well, now you're like me and you'll go long-winded on an intro. So I'm going to cut you there and go over to Shane.
No, that's fine. You're
I
the
know
boss.
you.
Well, I'm sorry, Zach.
No.
I love you.
Well, I'm Shane Leftingwell. I came out as lesbian when I was in 1983. I knew I was gay. I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And I was outed when I was 15 and went through high school gay and had a bitch of a time with it because I was a scholar and an athlete and everyone knew me, and I went to this tiny little school. So I kind of refrained from social activities after high school. I didn't go to college right away, and I zipped out of the house as soon as I graduated. But at any rate, that was when I found the women's community, and that was in the 80s. And so we all know what that was like in the 80s.
Coffee shops and bookstores.
Yeah, exactly. And don't mimic hetero relationships.
Right. Yeah.
And so I didn't learn anything about the Butch Femme dynamic until the 90s, the late 90s. And I had my first BF dynamic relationship in 99. And it was like, wow, everything just exploded and the world opened up. And I was like, holy shit, what I've been missing, because I knew there was something missing. And,
Right.
And here it was. And I had a great woman who left me. And, you know, how that goes.
We've all got that country song in our head, right?
You got it. And then I came back to Indiana. I was in Phoenix at the time. And then I came back to Indiana, where I live in a tiny little town. I have no community whatsoever, no friends. There's no bars. Even if I wanted to go to bars, I'd have to go to Indianapolis, which is an hour and a half from here. And I don't drink, so I don't want to go to bars anyway, really. And I don't want to pick up anybody in bars. So it's really difficult to find a date. And when I do date, I want to date a lesbian. I like that dynamic because I do still consider myself butch. And definitely masculine of center, but I've had the only surgery I've had is top surgery, and I'm going to keep it that way. And so it's difficult to explain to a new partner if there is a potential new partner. You know, so I've got all kinds of roadblocks ahead of me as far as dating goes. So
yeah, the dating pool turns into kind of a little puddle.
Yeah.
If a raindrop. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
There definitely folks in this community that are wired and born to be drawn to folks like yourself, and that's part of part of our singles groups on the Facebook and the dating app that we put out recently, is to assist in matching y'all up, with that.
Yeah.
Lots of check boxes.
Yeah.
Blake.
Yep. My name is Blake. My story is 47-year-old. So I'd seen this tennis player on TV. I can't remember her name now. Had actually had a sex change. One of the first people. So it was emotionally and educationally advanced than most people. So he went to Johns Hopkins Hospital, and I wrote them a letter. And I said, "What does this cost?" And I actually got a letter back. I don't know if they knew they were writing to a kid. So I started saving money in a shoebox. I'm like, this is what I need to get done. I was a lesbian all through high school, college. I transitioned in 1995 before the internet. So there were no support groups. I learned everything about reading in magazines at the library. And I met my wife on Boom.com 1998 and got married in 2003. We dealt with breast cancer for 10 years and she passed away last year.
Oh,
So I'm back here because the sense of community has always been gone, but I didn't miss it so much because I had her and it was just me and her. And now I'm way beyond lost. I'm lost in the world. I feel like I'm lost everywhere. It makes you question everything because there were no ones. She was here. She accepted me for who I am. That had a lot to do with confidence. So I identify as male, although I would say the average man, as far as mentality and everything, I'm nothing like them. So that's why I'm back here to try to find a sense of community.
right on. I know that Jay, that was going to be here today, also he had been sprung right out of a 10-year relationship, had the wife and child and everything going on, and then suddenly 10 years post transition, and this relationship ends, and they were concerned. they couldn't seem to land their feet somewhere where it felt right, and it felt. So yeah, there come that word again. It's like I'm so lost, Day, and I'm like, there's the thing is that the place for folks who have grown up in this community is still held at the table, and this is one of the things that really differentiates us and sets us aside from other gay women communities, like the mainstream L word community, and some of them have done well with their social platforms. Some of them have not. So some things go unchecked. Some things are well monitored. But I identify as agender, not male, not female, not a mix of the two, just something completely different. And outside of that, and didn't start. I started low dose T when I turned 50. And I've stayed on low dose since then. Been about 6 years, and haven't had to shave once. not a once. So and I thought for sure I'd have to start landscaping or do whatever, but I did have the comedy tragedy thing. It was like one side much more growth than the other for quite some time.
Yes.
So that was fun. So. But yeah. For me, the G was to match my innards with my outwards, and outers with my innards, and I've always had the long hair, and I've never, except for when my mom cut it off in first grade because she was tired of it. I've never had my hair short. Never did the the mulleting thing and all that, and I had my own struggles within our own community for having to being a long-haired butch, and we had to stand up and fight our way through at times,
I can imagine that, yeah.
And so it's yeah. My wife even looked at me twice. It's like
the community was and can be so judgmental.
They can be taken by, what gets me is with such diversity, they can still be taken by surprise. So, well, that's why we have moderators. But yeah, it's
lesbians. From what I've seen, tend to be and I call lesbians as in mainstream, not dykes.
Right.
They're so fucking judgmental, between you're the enemy, you're mimicking men. And I've got trans women who are friends of mine who they run into lesbians and they're purposely misgendered.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a whole another panel right there. And yeah. I've found that the most infighting I've ever seen amongst groups is ones that are focused on trans men. I was amazed at the amount of boot stomping there would be going on in some of them, and like almost every thread would just be a dumpster fire, and it was interesting just to notice that even more than our own community, there was so much infighting within that, and I've always been kind of curious as to why, and because because to me it doesn't make sense to stand at your podium and present yourself, and almost expect to be accepted for that, and then turn around and tell somebody else there's no such thing as what you're calling yourself. Not leaving room for binary and non-binary. That's been a thing. And so that was interesting to observe for some time. And
can I tell you this? The only reason I tilted my head for 1 year is that
my wife wants to have a little input as to why she tilted her head at my long hair.
Because it was a geographical thing.
Okay, yeah. She was from the South, and so
I saw your masculinity.
and I'm
sure.
California hippie,
I'm from Alabama.
and rubber plant fan, so rock and roll and all that. So yeah,
because I was
the short hair would never fit my own vibe, wavelength, or persona. It just is.
I can't
it
imagine
almost
it.
became a piece of my identity right there.
I can't possibly see you with short hair. It just
I
no way, it wouldn't work.
Me neither. I just
It
couldn't do
doesn't fit.
Couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. Oh, y'all look handsome, of course, but I can't do it.
I think I have the least hair among us all.
Well, you know what though? We know
same.
it was there, so it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I buzzed mine down really short to kind of camouflage the lack of
Exactly
what's on
what I
top.
do.
You're showing off your cranial circumference.
I used to, when I started T, I had nightmares about going bald.
I rolled the
nightmares.
genetic dice. My mom's
And
father
I
died
did
at 90
too.
something and still had hair, so I rolled them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and roll into a few of these questions that I threw out there. Did any of you have a period of mourning for your previous identity? The one that connected you with the community, that embraced your masculinity as a female identified being, but that still embraces you now. Did you have a period of mourning for your previous identity?
For
I can,
or who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
Zach, you seem antsy. Go ahead.
Because I had only worked with guys for years in news because I worked behind the camera, and then I mostly went out with straight women. But right now, as far as the community of being trans community, I use gel. I don't take a shot. And the trans men get together and give each other their shots, and they've become a group. And since unless I went and helped them get shots, I'm not part of that community. But on the other hand, I have 3 good people for almost 40 years we're friends from working in TV, who either have a queer kid or a trans kid. So they think I'm fine. They just, they're like, we've known you for how long? So that made it easier for their kid to come out as trans, which made me really happy. Especially reporters, because they can research everything.
Yeah.
My sis-in-law, my brother, we're from Alabama. They live in Georgia. She's extremely Southern Baptist. And the last time I visited, asked for dinner, could we have the topic be transgender? What happened to Nelda? They want to know what happened to who you were.
So they were mourning you. They were mourning your previous identity.
Yeah. And so we discussed it, answered questions, and finished with her with Julie saying to my nephews, that's Uncle Zach. That's what you need to call him. Yes, sir, and Uncle Zach. So go figure. But I wanted to be, people have always thought I was a guy. So.
Well, I mean, you look very comfortable in your presentation at this point, you know? So you look like
I wrote it down.
Settled in.
I wrote it down. So that's my story.
Wolf?
So what I found, which is odd, because I don't identify as male, I was accepted. There's an event called Desire that is for female born.
Fabulous, yeah.
Yeah. And before I went to Desire, I asked the owners, because I didn't consider myself a female or a woman.
Right.
And they were cool with it. The change came when I grew this, because I think it looks better. And top surgery. And that's a whole other story. That wasn't something that I thought I'd ever do. But I didn't identify with the lesbian community. Back in the 70s, I got thrown out of the Lesbian Feminist Center because I was holding doors for women and I was too masculine.
Wow.
This is back during the separatist era. So my community was never lesbians. It was Leathermen and Leather Dykes, which there's much more acceptance.
Find a lot of family there.
Right. But what I found happened is, as soon as I had enough tea and I've never touched my mustache. You can see how hairless I am. I've been on tea for years. But the change became places that are women only space versus men only space. I don't feel comfortable in either. Women won't accept me at this point. Lesbians, even leather dykes in women only space. Men somewhat. But it was like I suddenly found myself a man without a country, even more so than I had felt before.
Yeah. Yeah. But Shane?
Well, yes, I do find myself mourning. I did mourn my old identity, and I do still mourn my old identity because of the lack of community and connection to anyone. I got distracted. I've got a great big picture of Zach in front of me.
I'll smile.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? But yeah, I do still feel lost. My family accepts me, but it was a struggle. My mother is the most wonderful mother in the world, and she accepted me right away. It was difficult for her. It was hard for her to get the pronouns right, but she was working at it day and night. I mean, she never misgendered me on purpose. And my father still misgenders me, and even when I'm not there, he calls me she and my old name, and he's just a jerk. He's a whole nother story.
Yeah, huh? Sounds like it.
But my sister, when I did this in 2006, like with Wolf, I was about a month ahead of him. A friend of ours got us started, and the twins, my sister's twins, were young then, and they looked at me. And as a matter of fact, the boy, one time we were all laying on the bed in my mom's house, just kind of communing, because they live somewhere else. They live in Tennessee, and so they were visiting, and he jumped up on the bed and he just said, "You're a boy." And I'm like, well, yeah, basically I should be. And And then it turns out, you know, that later on I transitioned, and then my sister had some issues with that. She didn't know what to do with telling them about the transition and who I was and what to call me. Because from birth, or from the time they could talk, they called me Ollie. For some reason, they couldn't say my name. They called me Ollie. And I was like, I'm fine with that. They just let them call me Ollie all their life. I don't care.
Right.
But was it going to be aunt or uncle? And that's what my sister had a problem with. So now I'm just Shane.
Oh.
Just plain Shane.
Plain Shane.
Wait, Jane.
Shane.
Oh, Shane.
My wife's trying to listen in.
No, I was getting ready to call something.
Blake?
Yes. Oh, no, Blake.
Yeah, not you, Zach.
No, I can't hear him. Blake keeps breaking up on my screen.
Oh yeah, Blake was breaking up on mine at first too, and it started to get much better as the talking went on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I think I feel kind of like Shane. I don't know if it's mourning identity as my old identity as much as a sense of community, and that thing that, you know, you could just be walking down the sidewalk and you see another. I never called myself a lesbian. I just liked the term gay better. I could see another gay woman and just know there was a connection. Like, oh yeah, we're together.
Like,
you know, like
fist pump thing. Yeah.
There's like a brotherhood, sisterhood, wherever you want to call it.
Yes.
Well, now, you know, I see people, but they don't see me because they're seeing me completely different. And there's not, in my mind, I don't have that at the average male guy. Because as much as, you know, I like UFC, I like lifting weights, I'm just not all into that. I don't know, having to constantly prove how male you are. I'm not into
buffoon. I call it buffoonish.
You know?
Buffoonish.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not into that at all. So that I definitely miss that sense of community, you know, because I had a whole group of people that accepted me. We're always doing stuff, having parties, and that kind of dwindled away. And the
camping
bar
was popular.
Yeah. And the bar was where you could go and hang out. You know, I couldn't walk into a women's bar now. You know, I remember back then a guy came into a women's bar and we just immediately hated that person. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. What are you doing here? Get out.
Yep.
We would have done the same
space
thing.
only.
Yeah.
Right.
And if a couple walked in, you assumed they were looking for a third.
Yep,
right,
exactly.
right.
So I've gotten that. I've gotten thrown out of a bar, or tried to be thrown out of a bar.
Yeah, so that sense of community is rough. So I tried to find it in the FTM community. I went to conferences and stuff, and then I still felt kind of outside that group because there were a majority of people that were doing it because it was the thing to do. And for me, it was never that. It was, I got to make this match what's in my mind. So for me, it was all about, I finally look the way I felt for as long as I can remember. But yeah, mourning that sense of community, that was like a devastating loss because that was a large part of my life because I don't have any family. My dad was so old when I was born, everybody passed away. So that was my family. So it's like, you know, big loss.
Yeah.
Well, so my experience with the FTM community is the majority of them identify solidly as male, and a lot of them are stealth. And that to me immediately puts a block between me and them because the last thing in the world I want to be is stealth. I hate being seen as an old fucking white male.
Right.
I hate it.
You want the big the queer vibe still to stay remain. You want to walk your queer walk. That's right. Yeah.
I do have one big community that I only see once in a while. Is I played rugby for 6 or 7 years for the U of M, and all of those people are still friends. They don't care if I'm transition or not. It's absolutely fine, and I'm very lucky to have people who still, since 1997 is when we won nationals and we stopped playing, and people are still my friends. So that's great.
That's awesome.
I'm lucky.
I think what I'm finding interesting too is the is that the 80s and 90s. The 80s and 90s is where a lot of y'all are referencing your beginnings from, uh, and there wasn't a whole lot out there on gender and the variances of it, and there was still generations of undoing to do on this, but the equating masculinity to male, femininity to female, and one or the other, pick a line kind of thing, and I know that what I also find people even in our own community are still connecting sexuality and gender, and which are two completely different selves, and that's been interesting. But where you guys are all speaking of, was there a lot of information for you guys out there on things like the non-binary variances?
And
just
No.
yeah, not at all. And
No.
so the other thing about gender in the 80s and 90s, and I hate owning this, in the 90s, there was definitely not a whole lot about trans guys. And I ran one of the biggest gay online services in the country back in the mid 90s.
You're so gay.
I know, I'm so queer. And I have to own the fact that I didn't understand gender enough, that we a couple times had two trans women who wanted in the lesbian only areas, and I wouldn't let them in because I didn't understand it. I knew that I wasn't a lesbian, but because I was so new and trying to figure out, I tell people when they go, well, I don't understand it, I'm going, how the fuck can anybody explain it to you? It's been so confusing for me all the way through because there were no role models. When I came out, the word lesbian and gay had not ever appeared in the newspaper in Chicago, ever, much less trans stuff. And non-binary, one of the things that kept me from starting T, and I thought about it several times before I finally did, was the fact that I didn't want to be a male. And it wasn't until I started doing some reading and met a couple people that I went, I don't have to choose. I may have to choose for the government. I had to really think through being seen as male on the streets in public, which sometimes is great. Most of the time is great. But the first time a woman was scared of me at night, I actually cried.
Yeah.
And so non-binary is a huge thing. People like Day, you were one of the first people that I knew personally. I mean, I saw people on boards, but you and I have known each other for 16 years.
Yeah.
That was embracing non-binary. I think a lot of guys who were trans at that point in time either A, didn't know that was something acceptable, or B, were following the crowd.
Yeah. And following, generations of being told, well, tomboy, or masculine. Well,
right.
They immediately would equate that to I must be a man.
Right.
And I need change. Making a life decision. A life-changing decision based on just a lack of information. Not all, but some may have chosen. I mean, here in California, I get to put an X on mine.
I'm so jealous.
So yeah. It's like, and I'm always happy to tell somebody, where my shit began, and it began like in second grade. For me, being told to line up boys and girls, I just stood next to the teacher, and she looks down and she's like, "What are you waiting for?" And I said, "I'm waiting for my line." Now, I didn't have terms and language for that, right, back then, but lo and behold, I was standing there saying, I don't feel like I love them, but I feel like an outsider and an observer to both of these lines, and I was waiting for my own. And bless my mom's heart, I got sent home with yet another note pinned to my shirt, for her to sign. So
here's your sign.
At some point in time, I would really like to hear offline experience you've had with having X as your gender, and if that's caused any problems in and of itself.
Well, I was gonna say part of what you guys are talking about is like trying to blend in and approach within the community. Like it wasn't a problem before. I have cards, business cards, for our groups, right? And yeah, it didn't occur to me, thinking forward. I didn't think forward to this, that in the grocery stores and whatnot, and you see the dyke over there in the produce department who works there, and you want to come up and go, hey, and now I just look like some creepy dude coming up with a card,
Right.
it's,
Right, the creepy dude.
it's like, well, I might ought to think about that, and approach it, differently if I'm going to. I also didn't anticipate getting picked up on by gay men. I didn't see it coming. So
You and I talked about that the other night because
you want to talk about that, Zach?
Well, no, yeah, to flirt with you, right? My girlfriend would kill me, but no, I keep a big rainbow bracelet on, and then part of my if I ever have a business, my logo would be an asterisk made out of rainbow. So, but people, like you were talking about, you can't go over to the produce department, but a woman contacted me from one of the trans groups and was looking for a trans man to date, and we ended hitting it off, and
we're 6 weeks in now. I know. Congratulations.
Yes, yeah. It's like our 1 month anniversary, but she is pansexual, but who taught me about being trans and being a trans man? I was a nanny for the 2 little kids next door, and the 8-year-old took me to the library and got me a library card and had me look at different books because it's so prevalent at church. I mean, at school, because
Wow.
so many. She knew so many trans people at school.
Wow.
So, and that was 6 years ago. Now she's in high school and dating somebody who's trans. My niece is dating someone who's trans.
As an very intricately wired species as humans, it's interesting to me because I feel like people are indeed wired and born for particular attractions, and that can actually evolve with age.
Yes.
And your sexuality can actually become more fluid.
And with tea.
And with tea, I was going to say I've noticed that folks have expanded their sexuality horizon a bit post transition, and I find that to be interesting. And somebody shared with me their personal view on that. They said that for them at that point, they considered themselves bisexual. They said because at that point, having sex with a man as a man was different.
So one of the things that I found, I've always been able to look at a man and say they're attractive, but never been attracted to men. And it hit me even before I started tea that one of the big things was the idea of having sex with a man and being treated like a girl curdled my stomach. But what I found is that I could be after I started tea, attracted to trans guys, unfortunately not romantically, and I started doing the process on that, and I realized that in my head, hey, if I ended up getting involved in a relationship with a trans guy, I'd at least be seen as queer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so invisible, walking down the street with my girlfriend and everybody sees me as a straight guy. And yeah,
imagine your girlfriend who identifies as lesbian suddenly walking down the street and being taken as straight.
Right.
Yes.
And my girlfriend is straight, a mother of 3, and she explained to me that we were passing, And I've never even considered that I pass. But now that I have the beard and everything, I am a lesbian with a beard, I guess. That's what it feels like. But
I could never go with the term lesbian for myself. I think when I was young, it sounded like something I needed antibiotics for, and I, you know, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right, you know. It just seemed like every plant has a really long science name goes to it, and I just thought, well, how come I can't just be gay, super gay, you know, and twirl a little? I mean, it's, you know, so I've never embraced that. Butch was a natural choice for me, and then thanks to Cole B. Cole during one of the board meetings of the Butch Voices conferences, that's when the phrase masculine of center was first brought up, which was something that was meant to cover a broader spectrum. From stud, matcha, you know, all of the different cultures and ethnicities invited into one umbrella term, and yeah, that has actually that really stuck, and I'm really glad it took traction and stuck. You know,
is there? I have a question. Has anybody else thought about? Well, you just explained yourself, Dave, but the other women, other people in the group, the trans people, have you thought about bottom surgery? I've had top surgery. But the bottom surgery is not perfected. It's dangerous and it's extremely expensive.
So if I was younger, I might consider a clitoral release, which is the first stage of a whatever the fuck they call
metaplasty,
it.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I'd consider that, because bottom growth is the bomb. And you know, and I think that looks great, but the phalloplasty stuff, plus the loss of feeling, you know, yeah, no.
It's frightening to know that it isn't perfected, and the results could be grim, and there goes $50,000-$60,000, you know, and I think that one of the reasons why you find that you're still on the dating table with a lot of folks within our community is because the bottom surgery is not there, so that for that, I think for a lot of folks who partner with trans folks or people within the trans variety are not looking for somebody with bottom surgery necessarily. Although if they're with their partner and they go to have, you know, they're supportive and whatnot, whatever, you know, that is. But I'm pretty positive that one of the reasons the dating is still out there for y'all in this community is because probably 75, I'm just guessing, 75% do not have anything done for surgeries or procedures whatsoever in your nether regions, you know?
Hey, Zach, can I ask you a question?
Don't tease me.
So you said that you've dated mostly straight women.
Right.
I have never gone down that route, nor would I. That's been one of the challenges being seen as an older white male, is that straight women start hitting on you. But my perception would be that guys who tend to date straight women would be more apt to want a full bottom surgery because there'd be more acceptance of themselves. Did you?
And we found out, or what I have found with other partners, or with this person I'm dating now, you can go down the street or you can go online and get a very good dildo, etc. Or she actually just likes me as I am.
That's cool.
And I was surprised. Yeah, like you said, that is so cool. I didn't expect it because she's only gone out with guys. She's
She's attracted to the human, you know?
There you go. Thank you, Dave. That's, you know, she's kind and we have fun. We make each other laugh and we have great sex and it's fine. But she prefers that I look like a guy with the beard and stuff, because then we pass. So then now I'm going through the whole thing about, are we living in stealth? As you were talking about, is that Jack or Wolf?
Unintentionally.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Yeah. And when I realized that on New Year's, when she said something about, it's so great to be holding your hand, or do you like to put your arm around me? And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, that's right. I'm not being discriminated against. Nobody's hassling me. Nobody's staring at us. Nobody's commenting or calling us, faggots, or, which I hate when they called, I'm a dyke, is what I would say.
Excuse
But,
me.
Yeah.
There, I mean, I think all of us, well, okay, anybody who is not wired to be pan or bi, there is sometimes a natural, yeah, I don't want to deal with these kind of genitals. And I don't consider that necessarily discriminatory or transphobic or anything. And my perception was that guys who are really into dating straight women might run into that problem a lot.
And over the 100 women I dated, I never ran into it.
Wow, that's very cool.
So Blake, I know that your wife recently passed, and we, yeah. So hearts go to you on that. You then after I'm sure some period of time are going to be getting your toes wet again in that puddle, in that little dating puddle. Do you have anxieties around that at this point?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I've dated a ton of straight women too, and I've never had a problem. And I never, in my opinion, I don't ever want to have bottom surgery, just because I don't need that to be complete as who I am. Some people need it mentally; they just have to have it. I don't need that. I can save the money and buy a nice car. But that's just me. And yeah, there's a lot of anxiety around that, because when I first met my wife, I met her in 98. I'd started transitioning in 95. So I'd started growing a beard. So I posted that ad on Butch Femme describing myself as a very butch lesbian, knowing I was lying in my mind. So she responded to that. And I said, oh, well, you maybe need to go look at this ad where it said exactly, I'm an F to M, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, my roommate's doing the same thing. And she had dated one woman and had dated men all her life. And she had no problem with it. She told me that she was attracted to me as a person.
Right.
And she saw me as a man, regardless of what was down below. But yeah, there's anxiety because, number one, I worry about physically, I don't have any problem defending myself, but I'm not going to go put myself out there where I'm not safe. So I got to think about that.
Yeah. Having
grown up in Louisiana, that was a major concern.
Yeah.
I'm in Ohio now, so it's a little different. But yeah, you got to, that's that one thing that a lot of people don't have to think about. I look 100% male. When am I going to tell you this? And usually I was always very upfront about it, and just because if they're going to not accept me, I want to know right now. So yeah, there's a lot of anxiety with that. And then there's people that I dated that it was just a novelty, and I don't want to be a novelty.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of things to
what
consider.
Does that, Blake, what does that word mean?
Novelty?
A fetish. A fetish.
Yeah, like just something to do because it's fun, something you've never done before.
Right.
Honestly, I had opened up a group that was specific for folks who are looking to date trans men, and I actually shut it down because of the amount of people I had coming in and answering the statements with absolutely crude and rude things. Straight men coming in to say that they want to bang a tranny, just whatever, looking for a sissy girl. I got so disenchanted with what it was collecting. I'm not putting my community through that, and I couldn't filter it enough. I just couldn't filter it enough, and I ended up closing it because I didn't want to put my people through that, you know, and it just got to the point where I just closed it. I just closed the group because it was open on Facebook, and I you know, Facebook does their own suggestions with their robots and whatnot, and I just didn't like some of the pending memory requests and statements that were coming through at all.
You also
and
see
I felt
that
like people were novelties and they were being fetished, and it's like, no, no. So
you see that a lot with gay men too, you know, because I decided that because I identified as queer, maybe I could date a cis gay man. Yeah, well, I couldn't anyway. But the bottom line is they were looking for bottoms because they wanted the bonus hole.
right.
And I have a lot of friends who are trans men who identify as gay men, and what they've gone through has been horrendous.
Humiliating.
Yeah, and it's like, and anybody I know who's a trans guy who's gay who's a top, I only know about 4, and none of them have been in a long-term, more than a date or 2 relationship with a gay man, because when they say, hey, you know, I don't swing both ways on that, they're gone.
Right.
Wow. What do you think about the argument or that some people have with wanting women's only space, and if there's a transgendered woman who still has a penis?
Well, see, now that's a whole nother thread.
Right.
that's a whole nother panel. We will cover that, Ashley. I have it on my list. Things like that. Because that is another difficulty world right there. The navigation comes from the complete opposite spectrum, and it is awful to watch people reduce the presence of trans women to their fucking genitals, and I don't like seeing that. I don't like hearing it. I don't like watching it happen. And I just think it's just like, just stop. You know?
Right.
So yeah, and then, you know, there's the whole turf thing, and a whole nother panel right there.
Yeah.
Shane, I'm interested now, and you have the cranial circumference showing. You have your typical male pattern baldness showing. Do you feel like this makes it harder for you to not identify as strictly male walking through the world? Because that is a telltale sign that I don't think people think about. It happens to a lot of trans men, but it does. You know, it's genetic.
I really can't be stealth. I mean, I really can't not be stealth. What am I trying to say?
I felt you. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Everybody knows is what I'm trying to say. I can't
Yeah.
hide it because of that. And it doesn't bother me because as a dyke, I shaved my head for 20 years. So
Right on.
that was tough. People gave me a hard time about that. But
but it was okay for Sinead O'Connor, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, she can do it. Yeah, why wasn't I famous?
We lost Blake out there sitting in his car.
Poor Blake. But no, it's yeah, it's all right. Doesn't bother me.
Excellent. I was just curious because I know that, you know, that's something that I watched some of the conversations and threads and whatnot in some of the FTM groups, and the horror some of them had when they began just to feel the first, you know, patches. Was I just saw you go through your nightmare flashback? Yeah.
No, seriously, you know,
and
Me too. Yes.
I'd say I'd rather not be bald. I'd rather not be having this issue. I'd rather have hair, but it is what it is, and I can't do anything about it. So
it is a
with it.
Genetic roll of the dice. I tell you what.
So Shane's and my mutual friend, Brent, started losing his hair within 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that had to be weird for him because he wasn't even necessarily butch. He was like a sporty lesbian
Yeah.
when he transitioned. And, you know, seeing him, and I don't have males that like fathers and grandfathers and stuff that I really knew. So I had no fucking clue what I was in for. I was terrified. And before top surgery, I used to have nightmares when I first started T of hairy boobs. Sorry, for me, hairy boobs remind me of an orangutan. And
You know, I mean,
it
it's
was
hard
one
not
of
to
my-
make that. It's hard not to. I mean, you
and
know.
it scared the I was, thank God I'm a fucking Mexican hairless.
Isn't there a puppy with that? With
That's
that
what
same-
that's why I
Yeah,
said that. Yeah.
That's what you're referring to.
Mexican
All right,
hairless
all
Chihuahua.
right, there it is. Okay, Chihuahua. All right, that's. I didn't want to
Yeah.
call you a Chihuahua, but the word was popping into my head.
Yes.
Well, I does anybody know why all of a sudden? Because I couldn't find anybody to do top surgery like 10, 12 years ago before I even, because I was already considering transition. I went to a plastic surgery and he just fucked up everything. So then when I did have top surgery, one of my pecs is not there compared to the other pec. And it's because I had seen this plastic surgery. So when did all of this trans stuff all of a sudden explode? That's what I'd like to know.
When the insurance company started to cover it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, seriously. You know, because I considered it a couple times and then blew it off because, you know, you get to a point where your body's your body. It didn't kill me to see myself naked. So I accepted them. They were there. They were big. And when I finally looked into it, Medicare had started to cover it. Well, then there were no surgeons anywhere within 3 states, unless I went to California. But slowly, more surgeons, because Medicare and a lot of states, Medicaid even cover it, you're getting more surgeons who are doing it.
Who will go through the training to go from maybe they were just doing
amazing.
double mastectomies, and now they're
Right.
going through the training to go a different route with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. See, that's what I had. I had double mastectomies. I did not have chest reconstructive surgery.
So
I actually had the mastectomies before I decided to transition.
was
Because
that
I
a
hated
medical?
my boobs so
Oh.
bad. I hated them. I could not stand them.
That's
And
what I feel the same way.
insurance did pay for it because we ended up getting a diagnosis of fibrocystosis, but
They found a
wouldn't-
code. Yep, a billing code. That's what they
Yeah.
needed. A billing code.
But they wouldn't replace the nipples because that was cosmetic.
So they still, a lot of insurance companies don't. I got really lucky. But basically, I talked to my surgeon because he had only been doing surgery for trans years, and I talked with him, but he was a big boob man. He did women's and reconstructive for mastectomies and stuff. And basically, the biggest difference, the only difference, is you go down only to the muscle. You just don't take any of the muscle. That's the only difference.
Ah.
Oh shit! Hi.
Hi, Cern.
Now she's beat red.
She come over, didn't realize that
What
Wolf
she
was on
did,
the
she was
panel.
looking.
Come over, leaned over and gave a little kiss, and then
But-
looked over at the screen and went, "Oh shit!"
So I've got the background, and as long as she stayed this far away, she'd be faded in the background.
Okay, well,
Right.
That was
Now
cute.
she's beat red. She says hi though.
No,
Hi.
hi. Yes.
You're on candid camera.
You know,
Uh-huh.
but what I've seen of guys who've gone to surgeons who just do mastectomies, they really don't pay attention to the scars.
Absolutely not. I've got a fucked up mess and I really want to see somebody to get it fixed and possibly to get some reconstruction, maybe some pecs, but I have a pretty solid chest as it is. I'm pretty well built. I'm pretty well built in that area. I'm kind of barrel built. So
and that really helps. So I got a funny about top surgery. Um, I always, because I couldn't bind because I was big enough and I am barrel chested and it hurt, but I did all my layers and tight stuff
Right.
and I got out of top surgery. And 2 days later, I had on the little thing. They had taken off the big bandages. And I looked in the mirror and I'm like, son of a bitch, I've still got a cleavage. So the entire time I was worried about the fact that they showed, it wasn't because I'm really muscular. So you end up with a chest and consider yourself lucky. I know guys who have a typical woman's musculature and they're concave because they take off, they take off the breast tissue.
Yeah, I had a good surgeon at the U who had done not many, but several top surgeries. And so, everything except for that, there was nothing she could do where I had an infection after the plastic surgery. And so it's, but that's the other thing is I like my body the way it is now, more like a guy than a woman. And that's, so I go by male as in pan or not, or binary, or I don't even know all the terms. So I just leave it.
My understanding is, and this is still on the table, there's been some dialogue and heated discussions over this, but to a lot of folks, bi meant just a two, which meant man, woman, whereas pan was more encompassing, regardless of gender.
Right. I'll be right back.
And and so way back when, y'all, like Shane, we'll start with you on this one. Do you remember your first exclusionary encounter within our community for transitioning, and your first inclusionary encounter when we first were embraced for it, and how that made you feel inside, as opposed to running across people within our own community who seem to be exclusionary at that point, because once you come out to folks even within our own community, sometimes, especially during those years, it was prevalent for folks to cry out that they're losing all of their butch sisters,
right.
And so
I had exclusionary experiences even just as a dyke, because I looked so much like a man.
There it is. Yeah. Yep.
And my first inclusive experience was when I for some reason or another in 2006, when I got a job at this place called Autocar. Dating online exploded for me. I got all kinds of dates online, and I was even under house arrest. They had to come to me. and that's,
not that that's hella funny, but it's it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't funny, but
right.
But it is funny, because they had to come to me, and they usually had to come from far away because I lived in the middle of nowhere. But I met a long-term girlfriend that way. We were 8 years, and that, for me, that's long-term, because prior to that, 2 to 3 years was my max. 2 years probably was my max with anybody. But that was very inclusionary, because that made me feel wanted and desired as I was.
Yeah.
I've
watched it happen on the feeds through the years, right directly in front of the entire community. I've watched it happen, and I've watched the conversations unfold and things be unpacked. And like I said, there was it didn't happen overnight, but there was some bridges that needed to be built. And I'll be damned if we weren't, but back then there was only really a couple of main places to be, for our community. And now I feel like our community is spread out thin through so many different social media outlets, Reddit and Quora, and just, I mean, there's people who are and so it's tough to have a community wide conversation anymore.
You can't.
I mean, you can't get everybody under under the same roof at once, and
Can we just
although
go back
you
to
could never do that before,
butchfemme.com?
we sure got close to it, And
I want to just go back to butchfemme.com.
Yeah, well, that's
That
another
was-
subject right there.
That was successful for me.
Yeah, it was to a point. I mean, it had its good. I mean, hell, we've all gotta thank the years of people and friendships and extended family that we met there. There, it had its icky spots. Like a lot of places. And I think that was one of the things my wife and I, when we started the group on Facebook, there was certain things we didn't care to really carry forward, and tried to cut some of the fat off the meat there, and just, and that's rainbows and unicorns and glitter and shit. Okay. I mean, I realize I live in that bubble, but to me, I just wanted to bring the good shit forward, and
you did.
It took a long time to get that shit leveled off, though. So, yeah, took a long time. But
yeah, well, great job.
Thanks. If the membership wasn't into it, though, it wouldn't happen. So I feel like it's like they're not a reflection of us. I feel like we are a reflection of them. And yeah. You really got to be somebody who loves and embraces every aspect of diversity to be able to host a community like this, because your lens has to be super wide.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And you have to be patient year after year after year, even if you have to explain the same thing over and over. I've never been somebody to tell somebody to Google it, and I feel like I took that on as host, though, and so that call to volunteerism to just start a little group turned into this, giant thing, in a full-time, thankless, paidless job all these years later. So, but it's the rewards come in different ways, right? So,
Well, I got most of my almost all questions answered. So thank you guys.
I saw you had some stuff written down over there.
Yeah, I did. So, but they're all answered. So thank you.
So my question is, has anybody ever really run into a community in the real world who you feel included with?
Only the rugby team.
Because, I haven't. I've been in situations where a lot of the people in whatever group tried. Actually, the most inclusionary have been in straight groups, like the church that I used to belong to. And I just haven't run into it. I haven't run into any place where I didn't feel like I just wasn't quite a fit, and people overall knew how to deal with me.
Well, I was lucky because we have a public radio station, and I've had a 4-year on-air with lesbian separatists, which didn't really work very well. But then a few years later, with a woman named Eleanor Savage, who was in charge of getting art people, movie makers, painters, writers, whatever, to come to the Walker Museum or Center. And we got a radio show. It's called Fresh Fruit. And we did that for 4 years. And then afterwards, because we got to interview many people, afterwards, we did once a month because there were so many of us from the radio show that knew how to set up the soundboard and all the cables and the mics and etc. Once a month, we would have a show of people who are starting to become musicians or comedians, etc. And the community would come. But that, you know, it lasted for about a year. And then after that, I don't think there is, like I said, the trans guys, I don't get a shot. So I'm not included to, you know, to go watch football or anything because I don't go over there to give them shots. So this has been interesting. And like I said, you guys answered my question. So thank you.
I was really verklempt and proud to see, you know, with COVID, it's cut a lot of stuff out, you know, for social stuff and gatherings in real time, in real person and whatnot. And May of 2021, we had the retreat, and you know, we had purposefully cut over half of the, you know, bookings off so that there would be, you know, and spread out. And we're looking around at everybody. At some point, I was kind of just sitting back and looking around, and it suddenly hit me that we seem to have managed, even within just 50 to 60 people, represented so many of the identities that gather in the community all together, and also in race and culture, color was represented pretty well, and I had one of those moments, you know, I was just damn proud of everybody loving on each other, you know, and I just, you know,
and
yeah,
you know, like the groups are really inclusive. The groups that you run are wonderfully inclusive. The caveat I have of that, my experience over the years has been that a lot of the femmes still don't want to date trans guys, whether you identify as male or whatever. It's like, you know, I was sure my girlfriend wouldn't want to date me because she has not walked through the world being seen as straight. In fact, my best friend said, I can't believe she was willing to date you because you're trans.
it's a lot. They have to talk to themselves. They have internal work to do there, you know.
And I get it. I don't consider it transphobia. I don't consider it, you know, it's
right.
I don't consider it any of that, but it just it for me, because I tend to be one of the pickiest motherfuckers. Dave, you know this.
No.
Well, hey, it took my dating puddle into a dating teardrop.
Right.
You know, I don't know if you
you've
guys
been
have run into
persistent
that.
for many years, though. You've never, you know,
Right.
taken yourself off that table, and you have engaged,
Right.
you know, for years within the community, and you know, and have always spoken, you know, your truths on threads and engaged, you know, dialogue. It's always been there, and
Right.
I think with some folks in our community, I think some folks that deal with the trying to navigate being invisible. Femmes are already invisible, and there's that's another layer to put on top of it for them. And they,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
My ex, because I've been called he since before I identified as trans. Again, that came from the online thing where that was our way of designating Butch or Femme easily.
Right. The defaulting, yeah.
Right. And, you know, and I finally said to her, I'm like, you know, it's okay if you tell people I'm trans. And she goes, you don't mind? I'm like, why would I mind? Because she found herself losing her identity. Everybody at work thought she was straight for the first
They start to
year
ask questions. Threads would come up and say, what does that make me now?
Right.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah, well, I asked the person who I'm dating now, and she said, I'll just tell people I'm pansexual. And that's what she told her kids. You know, they're 14, 17, and 18.
Yeah.
But soon,
they know what fluidity is. Yep.
I'm amazed at all the high school. I taught for a while. So for me to see all these kids who are so trans or into all these different things, I do worry about when they get to be 30 or so, or they want to go back to being a girl or a boy, or is it too late? That's the only thing I worry about being. I'm comfortable with me, but I didn't.
I think education is the key on that. I really do.
Right.
I think that education on gender, and then maybe a few weeks later, sit down, educate on sexuality, reminding people that, you know, it's not connected, and that this masculinity of yours doesn't mean that you're a man. They don't own it. You get to have that, and you get to walk around with it. You know, so you know, please don't. You know, so and letting them know that, you know, studying actual human. The history of our species, which will show, you know, from very, very, very far back towards the beginning of the gender variance and presentation and acceptance, and there was there was a show, it was the history channel put on, it was called Taboo, and they had introduced 5 genders, and this is a tribe that today, you know, exists. That they celebrate 5 genders, and they believe that if they do not celebrate all 5 genders and lift them all up, then they will not achieve harmony in their society.
Right.
We are so far behind in gender in the United States and Western civilization. It's embarrassing. And these folks don't, you know, have never even seen a vending machine, for hell's sake, you know, but they sure know about their own species and humans and the variants, and it's like a natural state for them to just accept, and you know, thanks to the Pilgrims. You know, Jesus. So, you know, we over here just generations of shit to undo now. So
Yeah.
How you doing over there,
Hey,
Shane?
Wolf.
Yeah.
I'm still talking to Anita.
Good.
Excellent. I don't even know who it is.
But you know,
I'm
the other
happy
thing,
for you, though.
the other thing that I think that Day, you've made a big difference in. About 7 years ago, I saw, and again, in my personal experience, what I viewed was that a lot of butches, when I said I'm a butch, would freak out. You can't be a butch because you've got, you know, your auntie, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, therefore, you know, you're a trans guy and you're just saying you're a butch. And I don't see that as much anymore,
Right.
You know, because we have all these labels for ourselves. And if you tell me somebody who's got only one label regarding their sexuality or gender, just those 2 things, I'll be talking to somebody who has done no self-reflection whatsoever.
I need several check boxes because I'm very
Yeah.
layered. You know, that was one of the things, our goals with the dating app was we couldn't change the very first one into the very, very first field of I am into multiple choice. So we made a secondary that's multiple choice, and you get to select a bunch of boxes for yourself, and then select a bunch of boxes down here for you to open to dating, and that made all the difference in the world for us, you know. So, but yes, being able to self-identify is an empowering part of who we are. It's who we.
There's still areas
we get, geographically, exactly. There's some areas who are not going to have the same delightful reactions to some of the terms and terminology crunched together, and you know, they'll get there, though. I have faith they'll get there.
And that's why I settled on a trans what the fuck, because it's the only thing that fit me.
And when I can remember when I first found agender, and I thought, well, shit, that's totally me, because I never related to being a blend of or one or the other, and I've just always stuck with, I intentionally and deliberately othering myself internally, because I stuck to that, because that's just how I, and my mom, she's 82.
awesome.
She's 82. And
She's awesome.
Yeah, she friended a bunch of my friends years ago on the Facebook. She wanted to play Farmtown. So, but she refers to me as her kid, her
Right.
youngest, and not son or daughter. And she'll still use my birth name. That's her right.
Right. She's your mother.
And I get that. But Ma's cool. Ma's cool because
She is.
she gets it. She gets me.
If she ever responds to them and says LOL.
Oh yeah, I had to teach her. I said, Mom,
apologize.
do you know, this is years ago, Mom, you know what LOL means, right? She goes, lots of love. I said, no.
I love it though.
No, because I didn't want to see her. Somebody's, auntie passed away. I don't want her to see her go LOL on her shit,
No.
So I thought
Yeah.
something struck me one day. I thought, that doesn't seem like it's in the right context, Mom. Do you know what it means, right? And when I heard that, I said, oh my. And I opened up a secondary account, to play my Farmtown hella years ago, and here she is messaging that account, going, "Hi, it's Daywalker's mom," and I'm like,
everybody knew.
I'm like, and I get under my name. I'm like, Mom, that not everybody on Facebook knows who I am, right? Oh.
That's funny.
God love her. God love her. Yeah.
She still thinks everybody knows.
She
you
raised me
Facebook.
she raised me tight and strict, though. She worked in Santa Rita prison for 25 years and Oakland PD before that. So
Yeah.
I was still a deviant. Or defiant, I believe was the word
Defiant,
put on my
yes.
report card one year. Defiant. Really? You write that on my report card? The hell kind of teacher are you? But they were right. I mean, I learned a new word that year. So
That'd be funny.
So I don't know. I
think
I want to thank you guys all for showing
Thank
up.
you.
It's panels are tough because everybody's schedule, it goes rigmarole right before the panels on us at times, and I think the Stone panel is coming up on February 6th, and I finally had to stretch that out so far until I found that some of the main folks and key players in that community were going to be available. So I stretched that all the way to February, but the first couple of them, I didn't feel like we had enough representation for the intricacies and layers involved in Stone identity, and they all needed to be there. And so I postponed it twice for that. It was worth the postponing because it needs to be, it needs to all be there. So, but this has been a new thing for me, and I'm getting great joy out of putting the spotlight on our community.
You guys did great.
Thanks, Dollface.
Thank you.
You.
She had to get in there.
Love you.
They love you.
Yes.
So thank you guys for taking part in today's.
Thank
I
you.
will
Jane,
make sure that the Zoom should have this on a cloud for me to download, and I'll do the little video upload thing, and in a hippie minute, which it could be 1 to 2 days. It will be up. Okay.
We know you.
We know.
We
Yeah,
love you.
My own time zone. So
yeah, in your own
Nice.
time. Yeah.
Nice meeting you
I
face
got,
to
I
face.
got my
Jack.
new watch. It's nice
Oh.
and lavender.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that the other day. I don't wear one.
It just,
Why bother?
I
A watch, yeah.
I'm just wearing it.
I actually had one, and it was from the California Motorcycle Training. One of the trainers years ago, and I worked with motorcycles 25 years, gave me one with the Iron Horse on it. And I recently gave it to Virago because all these years later, that's what they do. One of their many jobs.
Cool.
And they were like, wow, they stopped doing this logo in 2006 or something. And I'm like, I know. That's how long I've had it. So here you go.
Bravo teaches motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been motorcycle contingency.
Yeah.
For
Well,
30 years.
I tell you, it's a hell of a field to be in. And if you really like what you're doing, and you don't care to have a retirement at all, go ahead and enter it.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
everybody have a good rest of your Sunday.
Yes,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
too.
Happy
Take
Sunday
it
to
easy,
everybody.
Shane. Nice meeting you,
Okay.
Zach.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.